I still can't walk past the children's section in a store without thinking about my son. Even now, a whole year after Noah disappeared, I still catch myself looking at small winter jackets and wondering if he'd outgrown his old one by now. That's the kind of thing nobody tells you about losing a child. The world doesn't stop with you. People still laugh. Traffic still moves. Meetings still happen. But your mind gets trapped in these tiny moments that keep replaying when you least expect it. My name is Adrian Cole, and before that winter, I honestly believed money could solve almost anything. I built one of the biggest tech companies in Boston. People used words like brilliant, disciplined, untouchable. I had investors calling me at all hours, magazine interviews lined up months ahead, a penthouse overlooking the harbor, cars I barely drove, watches I barely looked at. None of it mattered after Noah vanished. He was 6 years old. Smart, loud, always asking questions. He used to kick the back of my seat while I drove and then laugh when I pretended to get annoyed. Sometimes I still hear that laugh in my head when I'm alone too long. The day he disappeared, we were on a family trip overseas. One second, he was there asking for hot chocolate because his hands were cold, and the next second, he was just gone. No warning, no scream, just gone. People think the worst part is the moment it happens, but honestly, they're wrong. The worst part is waking up every day after that and realizing it still happened. Over and over again. For a whole year I barely slept. I stopped eating right. I'd sit in Noah's room at night, staring at his bed, like somehow that would help me understand where he went. There were days I replayed our last conversation so many times, I started questioning whether I remembered it correctly anymore. I spent millions trying to find him. Police, private investigators, international search teams, tips coming in at 3 in the morning, most of them fake, some cruel. Every time my phone rang, my heart jumped anyway. Then January 15th came. 1 year exactly since I lost my son. I already knew that day was going to destroy me. My assistant Rebecca kept calling that morning about some merger meeting downtown that was supposed to double the value of my company. But I couldn't bring myself to care. I remember standing in my bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror while she talked, thinking how strange it was that I still looked like a successful man on the outside. Expensive suit, perfect tie. Meanwhile, inside, I felt like somebody had hollowed me out with a knife. Then my phone battery started dying. Traffic backed up because of an accident, and my car broke down in the middle of a part of Boston I'd never even walked through before. Any other year, I probably would have exploded over something like that. But grief changes your relationship with problems. Once life hits you hard enough, smaller things stop feeling important. I grabbed my briefcase and started walking because I didn't know what else to do. I remember the cold that day more than anything, the kind that creeps through your coat and settles into your bones. My shoes were slipping on dirty snow, while people rushed past pretending not to look at me. I probably looked insane, a billionaire wandering through back alleys alone in the middle of a workday. But the truth is, I wasn't really seeing the city anymore. I was seeing Noah everywhere. A little boy crossing the street holding his mother's hand, a red knit hat that looked like the one he used to wear. For months after he disappeared, every child around that age hurt to look at. Even hearing kids laugh at restaurants made something inside me tighten. Then I turned into that alley. I don't even know why I started crying right there. Maybe because nobody was around. Maybe because I was tired of pretending I was okay. Or maybe because grief catches up to you when you finally stop moving long enough to feel it. I just remember leaning against that wall and suddenly not being able to breathe right. Once it started, I couldn't stop. I cried harder than I had since Noah disappeared. Not quiet tears either, the kind that makes your chest hurt, the kind that leaves you shaking afterward. And somewhere in the middle of that breakdown, I heard a little voice behind me say, "Sir, are you hungry too?" I turned around expecting maybe some teenager messing with me, but instead I saw this tiny blonde girl standing there in an oversized coat with snow-soaked shoes and red freezing hands. She looked exhausted. Not sleepy. Exhausted in the way kids should never look. In her hands was half a sandwich wrapped carefully in paper like it was important. For a second, I honestly didn't understand what was happening. Then she held it out toward me. That little girl was offering me her food. I remember staring at the sandwich because all I could think was, this kid probably needs this more than anyone. She was so thin, I could see how sharp her cheeks were even in the cold. Her hands were trembling, but she kept holding the sandwich out anyway, like she had already decided I mattered more in that moment. And I swear something inside me cracked all over again when I realized that after spending a year surrounded by wealthy people telling me how sorry they were, the first real act of kindness I'd felt came from a freezing little girl who probably hadn't eaten properly in days. I looked into her tired blue eyes, and for the first time in a long time, my grief paused long enough for me to feel something else besides pain. I felt ashamed, because I had everything in the world except the one thing I actually wanted back, and somehow this little girl who had almost nothing was still capable of giving. I didn't know her name yet. I didn't know where she came from or why she was alone in that alley in the middle of winter. I just knew that meeting her was about to change my life in a way no business deal, no amount of money, and no success ever could. I didn't know how long that little girl had been watching me, but later I understood why she kept her distance at first. In her world, men in expensive coats didn't just wander into forgotten streets for no reason. They came with police. They came with clipboards. They came with plans to tear places down or take children away. So when Lily stood a few feet from me with that half sandwich in her small hand, I could see she was scared, but she didn't run. That alone said something about her. She looked at me like she was trying to decide whether I was dangerous or just broken. And honestly, at that moment, I probably looked more broken than anything else. I wiped my face, embarrassed, but she didn't laugh. She didn't ask why a grown man in a suit was crying in an alley. She just held out the food and said, "Sir, are you hungry too?" I can still hear that question. Not because it was clever, but because it was innocent enough to hurt. I told her I wasn't hungry, though my voice barely worked, and I thanked her. But she didn't pull the sandwich back. She just kept holding it there and said, "You can still have it." Sometimes, food helps, even when people cry for other reasons. I don't know what that did to me, but something shifted. For a year, I had been surrounded by adults who spoke carefully around my pain, afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to get too close. And then this child, who clearly had almost nothing, offered me the one thing she actually needed. I asked her name because I needed to know who could still be that kind in a world that had treated her so badly. "Lily," she said. "Lily Harper." I told her my name was Adrian, and before I could say more, I looked at my watch and reality hit me again. The meeting. The board. Rebecca calling. The entire company waiting downtown while I stood in an alley with red eyes and a dead car behind me. I told Lily I was lost, that I needed to reach the financial district fast, and my car had broken down. Her face changed right away, like someone had just handed her a problem she knew how to solve. "I know a shortcut," she said. "Most people don't use it. I can show you." I should have said no. A grown man following a 7-year-old through back alleys in a part of town he didn't know sounded insane, even to me. But time was running out, and there was something in her eyes I couldn't ignore. She was small, freezing, and hungry. But she didn't look helpless. She looked like a child who had learned the city because the city had left her no other choice. So I made her a deal. If she got me there in 30 minutes, I would buy her a real lunch, the best one I could find in Boston. For the first time, I saw her try not to smile. She nodded like she was making a serious business agreement and said, "Follow me." And just like that, the strangest walk of my life began. A billionaire in polished shoes, trying not to slip on dirty snow, following a little homeless girl who moved through Boston like she had a map printed inside her head. Lily led me through gaps between buildings, narrow passages, loading docks, cracked sidewalks, and side streets I never would have noticed on my own. She kept glancing back to make sure I was still behind her, and every time she did, I felt this strange ache in my chest. Noah used to do that when he wanted me to follow him somewhere. He would run ahead, turn back, and shout, "Come on, Dad." That memory hit me so suddenly, I almost stopped walking. But Lily kept moving, and I forced myself to keep up. I asked her how she knew all these routes. She didn't make it sound dramatic. She just shrugged and said, "I watch people. I remember things." That answer stayed with me. Because adults say things like that when they're clever. Children say things like that when they've had to survive. I started noticing more after that. The way she avoided certain corners. The way she slowed down before crossing open streets. The way her eyes moved first, then her feet. This wasn't a child taking a fun shortcut. This was a child who had memorized escape routes, places to hide, places to find food, places to disappear when the wrong person came too close. I asked if she lived nearby, trying to sound casual, but the second I said it, she slowed down. I stay nearby, she said. Not live, stay. That one word told me more than she probably meant to tell. My chest tightened because I thought of Noah's warm bedroom, his books, his toys, the little nightlight he refused to sleep without. My son had everything a child could need, and still I couldn't protect him. Lily had almost nothing, and somehow she had learned to protect herself. That thought hurt in a different way. We turned onto a wider street, and she pointed ahead to a tall building rising beyond the old rooftops. "See that one with the sharp top?" she said. "That's near the financial district. Your place is probably a few blocks from there." She was right. Cole Meridian Tower stood just beyond it. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time that morning, the meeting felt less important than the child walking beside me. The way Lily talked about money stayed with me longer than I expected. When I asked how she knew where the financial district was, she looked at me like the answer should have been obvious and said, "That's where the money people work. And you look like one of them." I actually laughed for the first time that morning, not because it was funny in a rude way, but because she said it so plainly. No fear, no flattery, just the truth as she saw it. I told her I guessed she was right, though some days money didn't feel like it mattered very much. She stopped walking for half a second and gave me a look I'll never forget. "Money always matters," she said. "It buys food and warm places to sleep." That shut me up fast, because she was right. I had spent years thinking about money as power, growth, deals, buildings, shares, numbers on a screen. Lily thought about money as dinner and a safe place to close her eyes. That one sentence made me feel smaller than any boardroom ever had. We kept walking for a few minutes, and then she asked me why I had been crying if I wasn't hungry. In my world, people don't ask questions like that. They step around pain, they dress it up, they pretend not to notice. But Lily didn't know how to play those games, or maybe life had taken too much from her for her to waste time pretending. I told her it was a hard anniversary, that I had lost someone very important exactly 1 year ago. I didn't say Noah's name yet. I wasn't ready. Lily just nodded, serious in that quiet way children get when they understand more than adults expect them to. Then she told me her mother had gotten very sick 3 months earlier and was in a coma. She said the doctors called it a special sleep, but nobody knew if she would wake up. I remember feeling my throat tighten. There I was, drowning in my own loss, and this little girl beside me was carrying her own version of it in shoes soaked with snow. I asked if that was why she was alone. She kept her eyes on the sidewalk and nodded. They had placed her in a foster home, she said, but it was crowded. The woman in charge was harsh, and Lily felt like nobody there really wanted her, so she left. Sometimes, when a kind nurse was working, she would sneak into the hospital and sit beside her mother, even though she wasn't supposed to be there alone. Every word hit me harder than the last. I wanted to ask where her father was, where her relatives were, how a child could fall through so many hands without anyone catching her. But I tried to keep my voice gentle. She told me she had never met her father. Her mother had said he was a good man and would have stayed if he had known about her. But something had kept them apart. Lily said it without bitterness, almost like she was telling me the weather, and somehow that made it worse. Before I could answer, she pointed ahead. "There," she said. "That's your building, right? The one with your name on it." I looked up and saw Cole Meridian Tower rising above the street, glass and steel catching the gray winter light. We had made it with time to spare. I turned to Lily and told her she was incredible, that she had saved me from a disaster that morning. She shrugged like praise made her uncomfortable. "It was just walking," she said. But it wasn't just walking. Not to me. I crouched down so I could look her in the eye, not caring that my suit touched the dirty sidewalk, and told her she had helped a stranger when she had every reason to keep moving. That kind of kindness is rare. Lily looked away, embarrassed, and that was when I noticed how badly she was shivering. Her coat was thin, her hands were red, and the sky above us was getting darker like more snow was coming. I told her I had to go into a meeting, but I still meant what I promised. Lunch. A real one. I asked if she would wait inside the lobby where it was warm, For one second, hope crossed her face, but caution came right after it. "Are you sure they'll let me stay?" she asked. "Places like this don't usually want kids like me inside." That sentence hurt more than she knew. I told her it was my building and no one would bother her. Then, without thinking, I reached for her hand. I expected her to pull away. Instead, after a small pause, she let her cold fingers wrap around mine. That tiny bit of trust felt heavier than any contract I had ever signed. As we walked through the front doors, the security guards straightened and greeted me, but their eyes drifted to Lily. I could see the questions on their faces. A billionaire CEO walking in with a shivering little girl in worn-out clothes was not something they saw every day. Claire at the front desk told me the board was waiting upstairs and that the Whitman representatives had arrived early. Her smile faltered when she noticed Lily, but she recovered quickly. I told her, "This is Lily Harper. She'll be waiting for me here. Please make sure she's warm, comfortable, and not disturbed." Claire nodded at once. Then I turned back to Lily and told her I had to go upstairs, but I would come back as soon as the meeting ended. She looked up at me with those tired blue eyes and asked, "You promise?" There was so much behind that question. More than a child should have carried. I could tell she had heard promises before, maybe too many. Maybe from people who never came back. So I looked her in the eye and said, "I promise." 1 hour, then lunch. The best lunch in Boston, remember? A small smile finally broke through her serious face. As I stepped toward the elevator, I looked back and saw Claire leading Lily toward the soft chairs in the waiting area. And for the first time that day, I wasn't thinking about the merger. I was thinking about that little girl, and why the thought of leaving her behind suddenly felt wrong. I should have stayed with Lily a few minutes longer. I didn't know that then. All I knew was that the elevator doors were closing, my meeting was waiting upstairs, and a little girl in a worn-out coat was sitting in my lobby like she had accidentally stepped into a world that was never built for her. As the elevator carried me up, I kept seeing her small hand in mine, cold and careful, like even trust was something she had learned to use slowly. For the first time in a year, my mind wasn't completely swallowed by Noah or by work. It kept going back to Lily, to the way she had offered me food when she clearly needed it more than I did. Downstairs, Lily later told me, she sat on the edge of one of the leather sofas with her feet not even touching the floor. She kept her hands folded in her lap because she was afraid to dirty anything. Claire brought her water and something to read, but Lily barely looked at it. She kept watching the elevators, counting the floors, wondering if I was really coming back or if I was just another adult who had said something kind and disappeared. That thought still hurts me, because at 7 years old, a child should not already know how often promises break. Upstairs, I walked into the boardroom, and 15 faces turned toward me at once. Investors, attorneys, senior executives, people who cared very much about numbers and timing and appearances. At the far end of the table sat my mother, Evelyn Cole. She was 70, elegant, sharp, and still one of the most powerful people in the company. Even though my name was on the door, she gave me that polished smile of hers, the one that looked warm to everyone else, but always carried a warning underneath. "Adrian, we were starting to worry," she said. I told her I'd had car trouble and took my seat before she could ask anything else. The meeting started, but I wasn't fully there. People talked about projections, terms, risk, expansion, and the Whitman deal, and I nodded when I was supposed to nod. But part of me stayed in that lobby. Part of me kept wondering if Lily was warm enough, if she had eaten anything, if she was sitting there scared because every person who walked past looked like someone who might send her back outside. And I was right to worry, because while I was upstairs pretending to be the man everyone expected me to be, my mother stepped out of another elevator downstairs with 2 men beside her and saw Lily immediately. Evelyn noticed everything. The dirty shoes, the tangled hair, the oversized coat. The way Lily made herself small on that expensive sofa, trying not to take up space. My mother didn't see a child who had helped her son. She saw a problem in the lobby. Her voice cut through the room cold enough that Lily froze. "Why is there a child like this sitting in our reception area?" Claire hurried over and tried to explain that I had asked Lily to wait there, but my mother didn't care. She said this was a corporate headquarters, not a shelter, and ordered security to remove her. Lily told me later that her whole body went cold when she heard that. Not because she had never been spoken to harshly before, but because for one small hour she had almost believed she was safe. The security guard walked toward her, not cruel, but firm, the way people are when they're following orders and trying not to feel too much. Lily stood up from the sofa, clutching the edge of her coat, and said in the smallest voice, "But Mr. Cole told me to wait." She wasn't arguing. She was holding on to the only thing she had left from me. A promise. And that promise was already being pulled out from under her. I didn't find out what happened in that lobby until later, and when I did, it made my stomach turn. While I was upstairs, trying to sit through the most important meeting of my career, Lily was downstairs, holding on to one small promise from me, like it was the only warm thing she had left. She told Evelyn that I had promised to take her to lunch when the meeting was over, and my mother laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind of laugh people use when they have already decided someone beneath them is lying. She asked Lily if she expected anyone to believe she had just happened to meet me on the street, as if a child in wet shoes and an old coat could only be there for some dirty reason. Lily didn't know how to defend herself against that kind of coldness. She only knew what I had said. Then a young employee stepped forward from behind the reception area. Her name was Maya Chen, a junior marketing coordinator, and she had seen me walk in with Lily herself. Maya tried to say they should call upstairs and confirm my instructions before doing anything. That should have been the simplest thing in the world. One phone call, 1 minute. But Evelyn didn't want the truth checked. She wanted control. She asked Maya how long she had worked for the company, then told her this place had standards, that clients should not have to see someone like Lily sitting in the lobby. Maya still stood her ground. She said she wasn't questioning my mother, only asking to verify what I had told them. And my mother fired her on the spot. Just like that, in front of everyone. Lily heard it and panicked because now someone was losing her job for trying to help her. So Lily slipped off the sofa and said quietly that she would leave. That she didn't want to cause trouble. That sentence still breaks something in me. A 7-year-old child, cold, hungry, and alone, thinking her existence was trouble. Evelyn ordered security to take her outside and then told them to check afterward to make sure nothing was missing. That accusation cut Lily deeply. She had searched trash bins, begged when she had no choice, slept where no child should sleep, but she had never stolen from anyone. As the guard put a hand on her shoulder and started guiding her toward the doors, Lily saw my briefcase sitting near the reception counter. In all the rush, I must have left it there before going upstairs. The latch had come loose, and a few papers had slipped out. Among them was a photograph. Lily froze. Then she broke away from the guard and rushed toward it. Before anyone could stop her, she picked up the picture with both hands and cried, "That's my mom." The photo was of a young woman standing in sunlight, smiling like life had not hurt her yet. Her name was Sarah Harper, Lily's mother, the same woman lying in a hospital bed across town, trapped in that long, frightening sleep doctors called a coma. My mother's face changed when Lily said the name. That was what no one in the lobby understood. Evelyn wasn't just angry anymore. She looked afraid. She snatched the photograph out of Lily's hands and told her not to touch my private things. Lily kept saying, "That's my mom. Why does Mr. Cole have her picture?" But Evelyn called her confused and ordered security to remove her immediately. Lily struggled then, not because she wanted to fight, but because she wanted the truth. She begged to see the photo again. She kept asking why I had her mother's picture. Maya, even after being fired, tried one last time to stop it. She said they should wait for me, that something was wrong. But Evelyn warned her not to make things worse. And then they took Lily through the revolving doors and pushed her back out into the cold. The last thing Lily saw before the doors turned behind her was my mother slipping Sarah Harper's photograph into her designer handbag, holding it like it was evidence of something she needed buried. By the time I came downstairs, Lily had already been thrown back into the cold, and I didn't know it yet. That still bothers me more than I can explain. Outside, the guards had not hurt her, at least not with their hands, but sometimes being pushed away gently still feels like being thrown away. One younger guard felt bad enough to slip $5 into her palm and tell her to buy food, then warned her not to come back because my mother did not forget faces. Lily stood on the sidewalk with snow starting to fall, crying so hard she could barely breathe, holding that crumpled bill like it meant nothing at all. The money wasn't what hurt her. Being removed from the building hurt. My broken promise hurt. But what truly shook her was the photograph. My photograph. Her mother's face inside my briefcase. Later, when I learned that Lily had seen Sarah Harper's picture, everything in me went cold. At that moment, she was standing outside my tower, wondering why a man like me had a photo of her mother. Whether I had known Sarah, whether I was connected to the father she had never met, and why Evelyn had looked so terrified when Lily said her mother's name. While that child was trying to make sense of all that alone on a freezing sidewalk, I was upstairs finishing a meeting everyone else thought was a triumph. The Whitman representatives shook my hand. The board looked pleased. The deal had gone better than expected, the kind of deal people build careers around. My mother even touched my arm and said my father would have been proud. A year earlier, that might have mattered to me. That morning, all I could think about was Lily waiting downstairs for the lunch I promised her. I gathered my papers and said I had to go because I had made a promise to someone. That was when Evelyn's hand tightened on my arm. She told me if I meant the little street child in the lobby, she had already had security remove her. She said it calmly, like she had fixed a scheduling issue, not sent a hungry 7-year-old back into the snow. For a second, I just stared at her because I couldn't believe what I had heard. "You did what?" I asked. She said she was protecting the company's image, that Lily was probably trying to scam me, that people like that knew exactly how to take advantage of soft hearts. I felt anger rise so fast it almost scared me. Lily had not begged me for anything. She had helped me. She had offered me food when she had almost none. She had trusted me after life had taught her not to trust anyone. I asked where she was, and my mother gave a small, careless wave, as if Lily were nothing more than trash swept off the front steps. "Back where she belongs, I imagine," she said. That was the moment something between my mother and me cracked in a way it never fully healed. I told her Lily Harper had more honesty in her than half the people in that building, and when I said the name Harper, my mother's face changed. Just for a second, but I saw it. She tried to stop me, said we needed to talk, but I was already walking out. Then walking became running. I hit the elevator button so hard my hand hurt. When I reached the lobby, Lily was gone. Claire was behind the reception desk, pale and nervous, like she had been waiting for the storm to reach her. I asked where the child was, and my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Claire told me my mother had ordered security to take Lily out about 20 minutes earlier. Then she lowered her voice and said Maya Chen had been fired for trying to defend her. That made me stop. Another person had paid the price for doing the decent thing. I told Claire to call HR immediately and reinstate Maya with full pay. No record, no discussion. If my mother had a problem with that, she could bring it to me. Then I went straight outside. The cold hit my face hard, and light snow was already drifting across the steps of Cole Meridian Tower. I turned in every direction, searching the sidewalks, the corners, the passing crowds. 20 minutes. A child on foot could be anywhere in 20 minutes, especially a child who knew how to disappear. And that thought scared me more than I expected. Just then, I saw Maya leaving through the side entrance, with a cardboard box pressed against her chest, her face still pale from losing her job without warning. She looked up and saw me, and before she could speak, I asked the only thing that mattered. "Did you see which way Lily went?" I saw Maya coming out with a cardboard box in her arms, the kind of box people carry when a job they counted on has just been taken from them. I called her name before she reached the sidewalk, and she stopped like she expected more bad news. I told her I had already ordered HR to put her back on payroll, full pay, no record, no punishment, because what happened to her was wrong. But Maya barely cared about that in the moment. She looked past me toward the street and said, "Mr. Cole." The little girl was really upset when they made her leave. My chest tightened. "Did you see where she went?" Maya nodded and pointed east. Toward the park. She was crying. Then she hesitated, and something in her face made me stop moving. "There's something else," she said. "Lily saw a photo in your briefcase. She said the woman in it was her mother." For a second, the noise of the city seemed to drop away. I asked what photo, though a part of me already felt the answer coming. Maya said she couldn't see it clearly because my mother snatched it away, but Lily kept saying the woman's name was Sarah Harper, and that Sarah was in the hospital. Sarah Harper. Hearing that name after all those years hit me so hard I almost lost my balance. Sarah was not just someone from my past. She was the woman I had loved before my life became boardrooms and cameras and carefully managed grief. 12 years earlier, I had planned to marry her. Then one day she was gone, and all I had were explanations that never felt complete. Stories that sounded clean on the surface, but left something rotten underneath. My mother never approved of her. She thought Sarah was too ordinary, too soft, not the kind of woman who belonged beside a coal. I had buried that pain because I thought Sarah had chosen to leave me. But now there was a 7-year-old girl on the street, with Sarah's eyes, Sarah's name on her lips, and my mother hiding a photograph like it could burn her hand. I asked Maya how old Lily looked, even though I already knew. 7, maybe 8, she said. The timing lined up so perfectly that my stomach turned. I thanked Maya and told her to go back inside. Then I started toward the park, almost running. At that point, I didn't have answers. I had fear. I had anger. I had a terrible question pounding in my head with every step. Had my own mother kept a child from me? Had Lily been out there freezing, hungry, and alone while I lived 10 minutes away in a tower with my name on it? I pushed the thought down because if I let myself fully feel it, I might not have been able to breathe. Finding Lily came first. Everything else could wait. The park was almost empty because the snow was falling harder now. I saw her near the frozen fountain, curled up on a bench with her knees pulled to her chest, trying to make herself small against the cold. She looked even younger there, like the city had finally worn her down. I walked toward her slowly and said her name. She looked up, and the hurt in her face hit me harder than anger would have. "You lied," she said. "Just like everyone else. I deserved that. Maybe I hadn't meant to lie, but I had promised to come back, and when she needed me, I wasn't there." I told her I didn't know my mother would do that, and I was sorry. She watched me for a long moment, like she was trying to decide whether my apology was just another pretty adult sentence. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. "Why do you have a picture of my mom?" I sat beside her on the bench, leaving space between us so she wouldn't feel trapped. I told her I knew her mother a long time ago, that we had been very close. Then I asked carefully, "Is your mother's name Sarah Harper?" Lily nodded, surprised and scared all at once. She told me Sarah was at Massachusetts General, that she had been asleep for 3 months, that the doctors called it a coma. She said one day her mother had a terrible headache, collapsed, and didn't wake up after surgery. Lily said it plainly, the way children repeat hospital words they don't fully understand because adults have said them too many times. I asked if she had been alone since then. She nodded and told me about the foster home, about the woman who was harsh, about not having enough food, about leaving because she believed she could survive better on the street. "I know how to take care of myself," she said. And that sentence nearly broke me. No child should ever have to say that and mean it. I told her she shouldn't have to take care of herself, not at 7 years old. She only shrugged and said other kids had it worse. That was Lily, hungry, cold, betrayed, and still making her pain sound smaller than it was. I took a breath and told her I wanted to help, if she would let me, and that I wanted to visit her mother. Her eyes narrowed again. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care about us?" She deserved the truth, but not a half-formed suspicion that could hurt her more. So I told her the part I knew for certain. "Because I loved your mother once," I said softly, "very much. And because I think there are things I should have known a long time ago." I told Lily no child should be out there alone, especially not a child who had just shown more courage and kindness than most adults I knew. She didn't answer right away. Snow was collecting on her hair, her lips were pale from the cold, and she kept looking at my face like she wanted to believe me but didn't want to be foolish enough to trust another promise. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she said, "but I'm still mad your mom took my mom's picture." I told her she had every right to be mad, and I promised we would get that photograph back. Then I held out my hand and said, "First, let's get you warm. And I still owe you lunch, don't I?" Lily looked at my hand for a moment before placing her small, cold fingers in mine. "The best lunch in Boston," she reminded me, completely serious. I almost smiled. "The best lunch in Boston," I said. "But before that, we're getting you a coat that actually keeps out the cold." Her eyes widened like I had offered her something impossible. "New clothes?" she asked. "Really?" I told her yes. New clothes, then lunch, then we would go see her mother together. For the first time since I met her, Lily smiled for real. Not a polite smile, not a careful one. A real one, small but bright enough to make the whole gray afternoon feel different. And when I saw the little dimple in her cheek, I nearly stopped walking. Sarah had the same dimple. I had seen it 100 times years ago. Usually when she was trying not to laugh at something, I said. I didn't tell Lily that, not yet. There were too many pieces moving inside me, too many questions I was afraid to answer too quickly. So I just kept holding her hand and walked with her through the snow toward a children's clothing store a few blocks away. The woman inside tried not to stare when she recognized me, then looked down at Lily and understood enough not to ask questions. I told her we needed everything. A warm coat, boots, socks, gloves, clothes that fit, whatever Lily wanted. While the woman gathered things, I knelt beside Lily and told her to choose what she liked and not worry about the price. She moved through that store like she had stepped into a museum, touching sleeves and buttons gently, almost asking permission from the fabric itself. In the end, she chose a blue coat with a soft hood, sturdy boots, warm leggings, and a red sweater dress because, she said quietly, her mom always liked red on her. When Lily came out of the fitting room, clean enough, warm enough, and finally dressed like a child someone cared about, I had to look away for a second. She was still thin, still cautious, still carrying too much behind those eyes. But the street had been lifted off her, just enough for me to see the little girl underneath. The store owner let her wash up in the back, and when Lily returned with her face clean and her hair brushed, the resemblance to Sarah hit me even harder. The shape of her face, the stubborn little chin, the way she held herself like she was trying to be brave before anyone asked her to. And then I noticed her eyes. They were blue like Sarah's, but the corners tilted up in a way I knew too well. My father had those eyes. I had those eyes. I told Lily she looked very nice, but my voice came out rougher than I meant it to. She looked down at the coat, rubbed the sleeve between her fingers, and whispered thank you, like she wasn't used to hearing kind words without a cost attached. After that, I took her to a small Italian restaurant nearby. I had promised the best lunch in Boston, and to a hungry child, I figured warm pasta was worth more than any expensive tasting menu. Lily sat stiffly in the chair, watching the room like she expected someone to tell her she didn't belong. I told her she could order anything she wanted and asked what she liked most. She hesitated, then said, "Spaghetti. Mom made it on special days." Just hearing Sarah attached to something so ordinary, so warm, nearly undid me. I ordered spaghetti for her and coffee for myself, though I barely touched it. While we waited, I asked Lily about her life with Sarah, gently, piece by piece. I didn't want to scare her. I didn't want to sound like I was interrogating her. But every small detail mattered to me now. The apartment they had lived in, the songs Sarah used to hum, the way Lily said her mother always saved the last bite for her, even when dinner was small. It felt like I was being handed pages from a life I should have known about and somehow had missed. When the food came, Lily twirled the pasta carefully around her fork, trying to eat like she thought people in nice restaurants were supposed to eat. Sauce smudged her chin, and for one strange second, she looked exactly like a child at a birthday dinner, not a child who had slept outside the night before. That was when I finally asked the question I had been afraid of since Maya told me about the photograph. "Lily," I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could, "did your mother ever tell you anything about your father?" She looked up at me, still holding her fork. "She said he was a good man," Lily said. "She said he didn't know about me. She said something kept them apart, but if he had known, he would have wanted me." Then she studied my face with a kind of quiet sharpness that made my heart start pounding. It was like she already sensed the question I was too afraid to say out loud. Lily looked at me across that restaurant table with sauce still on her chin and asked the question I had been too afraid to say first. "Do you think you're my dad?" I should have been ready for it, but I wasn't. Children have a way of walking straight into the truth, while adults are still trying to find a safer door. I looked at her small face, at Sarah's dimple, at the shape of my own eyes staring back at me, and for a second I couldn't speak. Finally, I told her the only honest thing I could. I think it's possible. I said her mother and I had loved each other a long time ago, and then Sarah disappeared from my life without an explanation that ever made sense. Lily listened quietly, like she was trying to fit me into stories her mother had told her in softer words. Then she asked if that was why I had been crying that morning. I almost told her everything about Noah, about the boy I had spent a year grieving, about the part of my life that now felt full of questions I no longer trusted. But that was too much for a child who had already carried more than enough. So I told her I had been sad because I believed I had lost someone important. Lily nodded like that was an answer she could understand. Then she lowered her voice and asked, "If you are my dad, would that be okay? Would you want me?" That question went through me harder than anything else she had said, not because it was surprising, but because no child should ever have to ask if they are wanted. I leaned closer, careful not to scare her, and told her, "Lily, if you are my daughter, that would be one of the greatest gifts of my life." She didn't smile right away. She just stared at me, trying to decide if a sentence that big could be real. After lunch, I took her to Massachusetts General Hospital. Every step toward that building made my chest tighter. For 12 years, I had imagined seeing Sarah again in 100 different ways. Angry, crying, asking why she left, asking why she never came back. I never imagined seeing her like this, lying somewhere behind hospital doors, unable to answer any of the questions that had shaped half my life. And beside me was Lily, possibly our daughter, holding my hand like it had always belonged there. She told me Sarah was on the 4th floor, in what she called the special sleeping people section. I gently told her it was the neurology ward, and she nodded, gripping my fingers a little tighter. At the desk, the nurse told us only immediate family could visit patients in a coma. I started to explain that Lily was Sarah's daughter and that I was something. I didn't even know what word to use. A former love. A possible father. A man who might have lost 7 years with his own child. Before I could finish, Lily squeezed my hand and said firmly, "He's my dad." I looked down at her, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. The nurse's face softened when she recognized Lily as the little girl who sometimes came in when Nurse Anita Rao was working. Lily looked guilty, but the nurse only smiled gently and said, Sarah was lucky to have such a devoted daughter. Then she asked if my name was listed anywhere in Sarah's paperwork. It wasn't. Of course it wasn't. I showed my identification and asked to speak with her doctor. While we waited, Lily led me to a small seating area and told me the doctors said her mother might still hear people, even if she couldn't answer. "I tell her about my day when I come," she said seriously. "Maybe you can talk to her too." I said I wanted to, though I had no idea what I could possibly say. How do you speak to the woman you once loved after 12 years of silence, when she may not even know you're standing there? Dr. Marcus Hale arrived a few minutes later, a tall man with gray hair, tired eyes, and the calm voice of someone used to giving families careful truth. He asked me directly what my connection to Sarah was. I told him my name, told him Sarah and I had been together 12 years ago, and that I believed I might be Lily's father, though I had only found out that day. Saying it out loud made the room feel smaller. Dr. Hale recognized my name, but thankfully he didn't treat me like a headline. He explained that Sarah had suffered a brain aneurysm 3 months earlier. The surgery had repaired the bleeding, but she still hadn't woken up. I asked about her chances, and he looked at Lily before choosing his words. He said there were hopeful signs. Sarah was breathing on her own, and her brain activity was still strong. But recovery from a coma could not be promised. Lily finished the sentence for him in a small voice, eyes fixed on her new boots. It could be days, months, or never. Dr. Hale placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and told her Sarah was fighting, and now she had both of us with her. I don't know if Lily believed him. I don't know if I did either. But I know I wanted to. After a few more questions, he agreed to let me visit Sarah with Lily for now, though he made it clear we would need proper proof if I wanted to remain involved. I nodded, because at that moment I would have signed anything, answered anything, done anything just to walk into that room and see the woman I had lost, and maybe finally learn what had really been taken from us. When I walked into Sarah's hospital room, I forgot every question I had planned to ask. There she was, 12 years older and thinner than the woman I remembered, lying under white sheets with machines breathing their quiet rhythm around her, but still unmistakably Sarah. The same face I had tried to forget and never could. Her hair lay across the pillow, her skin looked pale, and yet her chest rose and fell like some part of her was still fighting its way back to the world. Lily went to her mother first, like she had done it 100 times before, and took Sarah's hand with a tenderness that nearly undid me. "Hi, Mom," she whispered. "I brought someone special today. Remember how you told me my dad was a good man who didn't know about me? I think I found him, or maybe he found me." Then she looked at me and said, "His name is Adrian." I moved to the other side of the bed, but my legs didn't feel steady. When I touched Sarah's hand, it was warm, and that small warmth almost broke me. 12 years. That was how long it had been since I had held her hand. I told her I had met Lily, that she was brave and smart and kind in a way that made no sense for a child who had suffered so much. I told Sarah she had raised an incredible little girl. Then my voice caught, because there was no simple way to say what was sitting in my chest. "I never stopped thinking about you," I said quietly. "Not once." We stayed there for almost an hour. Lily told Sarah about her new coat, about the spaghetti, about how she had walked into a fancy restaurant and nobody made her leave. I added small things when I could, but mostly I watched Sarah's face, hoping for the tiniest movement, a blink, a twitch, anything. There was nothing we could see, but Dr. Hale told us her readings had changed slightly while we were there, and for that one fragile moment, I let myself believe she might have heard us. Before we left, I arranged to cover every medical bill and move Sarah into a private room with the best care available. Money could not fix what had happened to her, but for once, it could at least stop the world from making it harder. Outside the hospital, snow was falling heavier, turning Boston quiet and white. Lily looked up at me and asked what happened now. I looked down at her small, serious face and felt how completely my life had shifted in a single day. "Now," I told her, "we find out the truth. Then we make a plan together." I knew where I had to go next. Not my penthouse, not the office. The Cole family estate in Beacon Hill, the house where I had grown up under my mother's rules, my mother's pride, and my mother's version of what our family was supposed to be. As the car pulled through the iron gates, Lily pressed her face to the window, staring at the mansion like it was something from a movie. "You live here?" she asked. I told her I grew up there, but it was my mother's house now. Her expression changed immediately. "The mean lady from your building?" I nodded. "Yes, and she and I need to talk." Before we went inside, I asked if she would wait in the kitchen with Mrs. Grace Miller, the housekeeper who had been with our family for decades. I told Lily Mrs. Miller was kind and made hot chocolate better than anyone in Boston. Lily still looked nervous, but she asked only one thing. "Are you going to get my mom's picture back?" I told her yes. That and a lot more. Mrs. Miller met us at the door, and if she was shocked to see me walking in with a little girl in new clothes and tired eyes, she hid it better than most people could. She took one look at Lily and softened. Within minutes, she had the child in the kitchen with hot chocolate, cookies, and a blanket around her shoulders. Then I went to my mother's study. Evelyn was waiting behind her antique desk with a glass in her hand, perfectly dressed, perfectly calm, like she had rehearsed this moment before I ever walked in. She didn't ask about Sarah. She didn't ask about Lily. She only said, "I assume you found your little street child." Something in me went cold. I told her Lily Harper was 7 years old, that her mother was Sarah Harper, lying in a coma at Mass General, and that I had every reason to believe Lily might be my daughter. My mother's face barely moved, but her fingers tightened around the glass. She told me not to be ridiculous, that I had no children. And that was when I asked the question I had been too afraid to ask all day. "No children?" Then explained Noah. For the first time, my mother's calm mask slipped. I stepped closer and asked why she had let me spend a year grieving a son who was never real. Why she had built an entire story about a little boy disappearing in Europe. Why she had watched me break over a child she invented while Sarah and Lily were somewhere in this city needing help. Evelyn looked away, and that told me more than any confession could. Then she said she had done what was necessary to protect me and protect the Cole name. I almost laughed because there was nothing left in me that could accept that word anymore. Protect me from what? From Sarah, the woman I loved? From Lily, a child who may have been mine? From the truth? My mother sat there with her expensive drink and her polished grief. And for the first time in my life, I understood that the person who had controlled so much of my world might have stolen the only family I still had left. I asked my mother for the truth, and this time I didn't ask like a son. I asked like a man who had finally understood that his whole life might have been arranged around someone else's lies. Evelyn stood by the window, looking out at the snow-covered garden as if the view could protect her from what she had done. For a while, she said nothing. Then she told me Sarah Harper had never been good enough for me, not connected enough, not polished enough, not useful to the Cole name. Hearing her speak about Sarah like that made something in my chest turn hard. I told her it had never been her choice to make. I loved Sarah. I had wanted to marry her. My mother looked at me like I was still the foolish young man she thought she could manage. Then she said Sarah had come to the house 12 years ago and told her she was carrying my child. I felt the room tilt. Sarah had come here. Sarah had tried to tell someone, and my mother had stood between us. Evelyn said she offered Sarah money to leave, to end the pregnancy, to never contact me again. When Sarah refused, my mother did what she always did when she couldn't buy something. She destroyed it. She told Sarah I was engaged to another woman. She told her I had been seeing that woman behind her back. She told Sarah the baby was an embarrassment I wanted handled quietly. I remember feeling physically sick because suddenly I could see it. Sarah, standing in this cold house, pregnant and terrified, hearing that the man she loved had betrayed her. No wonder she left. No wonder she never came back. My mother admitted she had people follow her. Sarah moved away, gave birth, worked whatever job she could, and raised Lily alone. Then Evelyn said Sarah returned to Boston about a year ago, as if she were discussing a file that had been misplaced. I held out my hand and demanded the photograph. She hesitated, then took it from her handbag and gave it back. I looked down at Sarah's face in that picture, young and laughing in the sunlight, and I hated myself for believing all these years that she had chosen to abandon me. But there was still one lie left, the cruelest one. I asked about Noah. My voice shook when I said his name. I asked why she had let me mourn a son who never existed, why she had invented a child vanishing overseas, why she watched me break for an entire year over a tragedy she had built with her own hands. For the first time, Evelyn looked old, not sorry, just old. She said she had done it to make me responsible, to make me focus on legacy, family, the company, the future. She said the grief had made me a better leader, that profits had grown, partnerships had strengthened, and the Cole name was safer because of it. I slammed my hand on her desk so hard the glass jumped. I asked her if she had any idea what that grief had done to me, how it had hollowed me out, how it had made me wake up every morning feeling like I had failed a child I could not even save. And all that time, my real child had been out there, hungry, cold, sleeping wherever she could. While Sarah lay in a hospital bed, unable to wake up, my mother tried to say Sarah should have taken the money. That was when I lost the last bit of restraint I had. I told her if she had not interfered, Sarah would have been my wife, Lily would have grown up as my daughter, and we would have been a family. A real family. Then I heard a small sound from the doorway. I turned and saw Lily standing there with a half-empty mug of hot chocolate in her hands. Her eyes were wide, confused, and hurt in a way no child should ever look. I forgot my anger at once. "Lily," I said softly, "how long have you been there?" She didn't answer that. She looked at me, then at Evelyn, then back at me. "You really are my dad?" she asked. "For real?" My throat tightened so badly I could barely speak. I crossed the room and knelt in front of her. I wanted to tell her yes, with certainty, right then and there. I wanted to erase every cold night, every hungry morning, every promise that had failed her. But all I could do was take her small hands and tell her the truth I had. "I believe I am," I said. "And if I am, Lily, I am so sorry I didn't find you sooner." Her eyes filled with tears. Then she looked past me at Evelyn and whispered, "She kept us apart. That's why Mom was always sad." I had no defense for that, no soft way to cover it, because the little girl had understood in one sentence what my mother had spent 12 years trying to hide. I told Lily it looked that way, But this time, we were going to fix things together instead of letting other people decide our lives for us. She looked past me toward Evelyn with a seriousness that did not belong on a 7-year-old face and said, "You're not a very nice grandma." The blunt honesty caught me so off guard I almost laughed. Even in the middle of everything, my mother didn't react much. She just stared at Lily with that cold, measured expression she used whenever something didn't fit the version of the world she wanted. Then she said children should be quiet and invisible, and that Lily's manners were another sign of poor upbringing. I stepped in front of Lily before another word could reach her. I told my mother that was enough, that Lily was my daughter, whether she accepted it or not, and from now on, this family was going to be very different. Then I looked down at Lily and said, "Come on, let's go home, my home." The way her fingers slipped into mine after that felt careful, almost fragile, like she still thought I might disappear if she held on too tightly. As we walked out of the study, she looked up at me and asked, "You're really going to let me stay with you?" I told her I didn't want her to just stay. I wanted her to live with me. She was my daughter, and wherever I was, that was her home now too. That was the first time I saw a real light explode across her face. A smile so sudden and bright it almost hurt to look at because it made me realize how little happiness that child had been allowed before today. Then she asked if we would still visit her mom every day until she woke up. I promised her we would. Every day. No matter how long it took. Behind us, Evelyn stayed alone in that study, surrounded by all the expensive things she had spent a lifetime protecting, while the family she tried to control walked away from her together. Over the next few weeks, my entire life changed faster than I thought possible. The DNA test confirmed what I already knew in my heart before the results ever came back. Lily was my daughter. Legally proving it was easy compared to accepting how many years had been stolen from us. I immediately filed for full parental rights, and my penthouse stopped feeling like the apartment of a wealthy bachelor almost overnight. The office became Lily's bedroom. She picked soft yellow paint because she said it reminded her of sunlight, and suddenly the place filled with books, stuffed animals, tiny shoes near the door, crayons left on counters, and laughter I didn't realize I had been missing from my life. For Lily, adjusting to safety was harder than I expected. She loved warm showers and soft blankets and having enough food, but survival habits don't disappear in a week. More than once, I found bread rolls, apples, and snacks hidden inside her dresser drawers. The first time I discovered them, my chest tightened so badly I had to step into the hallway before speaking. I sat beside her afterward and explained she didn't have to hide food anymore because there would always be enough now. Lily nodded, but I could tell part of her still didn't fully believe it. A child who has gone hungry long enough stops trusting promises, even gentle ones. Every little thing I learned about how she survived before me made me love her more and hate the lost years even harder. Evelyn disappeared from our lives after our confrontation. Officially, she left for the south of France for health reasons. The truth was simpler. Neither of us could stand to look at the other anymore. I stopped trying to understand her choices because there are some kinds of damage that explanations do not soften. Instead, I focused on Lily and Sarah. I brought in top neurologists, researched every treatment anyone mentioned, paid for specialists, private care, experimental consultations, anything that gave even the smallest chance. But the most important thing we gave Sarah wasn't money. It was presence. Every evening after work, Lily and I went to the hospital together. We built routines around hope because routines made fear easier to survive. Lily would tell Sarah about school, about new friends, about drawings she made during class. Sometimes she brought spelling tests she was proud of and lined them carefully beside the bed so her mom could see them later. I read from Sarah's favorite books while Lily curled up in the chair beside her mother. And slowly, without planning it, we started becoming something that felt like a real family. One evening, near the end of winter, when Boston finally started softening towards spring, the three of us sat in Sarah's hospital room with the steady beeping of machines in the background. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't waiting for my life to begin anymore. Somehow, in the middle of grief and chaos and lost time, it already had. One night, while Lily and I were sitting beside Sarah's hospital bed, she called me Dad in that soft, careful voice that still made me stop breathing for half a second. The word was new for both of us. She asked if I thought her mother knew we were there, if Sarah knew we had found each other. I looked at Sarah lying so still. Then at the little handmade card Lily had placed beside the growing stack of drawings and notes, and I told her I believed Sarah knew in some way. Dr. Hale had said her brain activity changed during our visits, and I held on to that harder than I wanted to admit. Lily seemed comforted by it. She told me her new friend Ava said her grandfather had once been asleep like that and woke up after 3 months, so maybe Sarah was just taking longer because she was extra tired. I smiled because children sometimes explain hope better than adults do. Before we left, Dr. Hale asked to speak with me privately. My heart started racing before he even finished the sentence. I asked Lily to wait with Nurse Anita for a minute, and once she was out of earshot, Dr. Hale told me Sarah's latest tests were showing real improvement. The new medication was helping. Her brain activity was stronger. She was moving closer to waking up. He warned me there were no promises, but he said we might soon see eye movement, finger movement, maybe even sounds. I gripped his hand like he had just handed me air after years underwater. He told me not to underestimate what familiar voices could do, especially Lily's. That night, when I tucked Lily into bed, she asked the question I knew had been sitting in her heart all evening. If Mom wakes up, will we all live together? I sat beside her and chose my words carefully because I refused to build another promise on something I could not control. I told her I didn't know exactly what would happen, because Sarah and I had been apart for a long time, but whatever came next, Lily would never have to choose between us. We would figure it out as a family. She listened, then said with complete certainty that Sarah still loved me. She told me Sarah had kept my picture in a special box and sometimes looked at it when she thought Lily was asleep. I had to look away for a moment. Sarah had kept my picture, just as I had kept hers. After everything my mother had done, after all the years and all the lies, something between us had still survived. The next morning, I made a decision that shocked almost everyone in Boston business. I stepped down as CEO of Cole Meridian Technologies and moved into the chairman role so I could spend more time with my daughter and still guide the company from a distance. Then I named Maya Chen as Chief Marketing Officer. People said it was too fast, too strange, too emotional. Maybe it was. But Maya had shown courage when powerful people stayed quiet, and that was the kind of leadership I wanted around me now. At the press conference, I said our company would no longer measure success only by profit. We would measure it by how we treated people when no one important was watching. The business world talked for weeks, but I didn't care the way I once would have. A little girl had once offered me her last piece of food in an alley, and after that, profit alone seemed like a very small way to judge a life. As spring slowly returned to Boston, I started the Sarah Harper Foundation to help children and families who had fallen through the cracks the way Lily almost had. Emergency housing, medical support, school programs, safe places to sleep, real food, real help. Things I used to think of as charity, until I understood they were the difference between a child surviving and a child being lost. And Lily began to change too. Not all at once. Healing never works that neatly. But slowly, the tiredness in her eyes started to lift. She asked more questions. She laughed more easily. She stopped walking into every room like she was checking for an exit. Some nights she still hid snacks in her drawers, and some mornings she still woke up afraid everything would disappear. But little by little, she began to believe that this home was not temporary. That I was not leaving. That Sarah was not alone. And every evening, we still went back to that hospital room, sat beside the woman we both loved, and told her about the life waiting for her when she found her way back. By April, Lily was doing better in ways that still surprised me. Her teachers said she was catching up fast, not just because she was smart, but because she worked like a child who knew school was something she had nearly lost. She had started making friends too, slowly, carefully, the way she did everything at first. But even with all that progress, there was still one empty place in our days. Sarah still hadn't woken up. The doctors kept saying the signs were better, that her brain was responding more during our visits. But when you love someone lying in a hospital bed, hope can feel both beautiful and cruel. Then one rainy afternoon in April, everything changed. Lily and I came into Sarah's room, shaking rain off our coats and umbrellas, just like we did every day, and Lily went straight to her mother's side. She took Sarah's hand and started talking before I had even taken my coat off. She told her about a science project at school, how her volcano had bubbled over for real, how her partner Ethan got scared and knocked part of it over, but Miss Alvarez still said theirs was the best in class. She told Sarah I had helped build the base, but she had done all the painting herself. I stood by the window, listening to the rain tap against the glass, watching my daughter talk to her mother with so much faith that it made my chest ache. Then Lily told Sarah about our apartment, about her yellow room, about how Mrs. Grace Miller had taught her to make Sarah's cinnamon pancakes, and how I said they tasted better than anything from a fancy restaurant. She was halfway through laughing at that when she suddenly stopped. The whole room seemed to stop with her. Lily was staring at Sarah's hand. "Dad," she whispered, and her voice shook so badly I was at the bed in 1 second. Mom squeezed my hand. I asked if she was sure, because I was terrified to believe too fast. Lily nodded hard, tears already filling her eyes. "She did. I know she did." I pressed the call button and leaned close to Sarah. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "If you can hear us, squeeze Lily's hand again." For a few seconds, nothing happened, and those seconds felt endless. Then Sarah's fingers moved, weakly, slowly, but on purpose. They curled around Lily's hand. Lily made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and I felt my knees almost give out. Dr. Hale and the nurses rushed in, checking monitors, asking questions, watching Sarah's eyes, her hands, her breathing. When Dr. Hale asked Sarah to blink if she could hear him, her eyelids fluttered. Just once, but enough. He looked at me. And this time, even his careful doctor's face could not hide the hope. He said she was showing clear signs of coming back. Over the next few hours, Sarah kept giving us small pieces of herself. Another squeeze. A tiny movement of her eyes toward Lily's voice. A brief opening of her eyes before she drifted away again. Exhausted by the effort, Lily refused to leave. Honestly, so did I. I asked for a cot to be brought in. And that night we stayed in the room together. Lily fell asleep, curled on the cot, one arm stretched toward her mother's bed like she was afraid to lose touch. I sat in the chair between them, too tired to think clearly, too afraid to sleep deeply. Sometime near midnight, I heard a sound so small I almost missed it. "Adrian." It was barely a whisper, rough and thin after months of not being used, but I knew that voice. I would have known it anywhere. I leaned forward, hardly breathing. Sarah's eyes were open, confused, weak, but looking at me. "I'm here," I said, taking her hand. "I'm right here." Her gaze moved slowly toward Lily sleeping beside the bed, and a tear slipped down her cheek. "Lily," she whispered, "you found her." I shook my head softly. "She found me," I said, "and she's incredible, Sarah. Brave, kind, stubborn, just like you." Her eyes filled with questions, but I brushed a strand of hair from her face and told her the rest could wait until she was stronger. For now, the simple version was enough. "Your daughter saw me crying in an alley," I told her. "She had almost nothing, and she still gave me her last piece of food. Sarah, that little girl changed everything." Sarah smiled faintly before her eyes closed again, too tired to stay with us any longer, but her fingers stayed wrapped around mine. I sat there without moving, afraid that if I blinked too hard the moment might disappear. Lily was asleep beside the bed, one small hand still reaching toward her mother, and Sarah was finally back from a place we had all been afraid would keep her forever. I knew we still had a long road ahead. There would be doctors, therapy, hard conversations, legal questions, and old wounds that would not heal just because one miracle had happened in a hospital room. But for the first time, I wasn't facing any of it alone. Outside the window, the rain had stopped, and when the clouds opened, the night sky was full of stars. I remember thinking that hope doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes as a child's hand squeeze, a whispered name, or a piece of bread offered in an alley by someone who has almost nothing left. 3 months later, on a warm summer afternoon, Sarah stood on the balcony of my penthouse, which no longer felt like mine alone. It had become our home. Lily was splashing in the rooftop pool with a few school friends, laughing in a way that still made me pause because it sounded so free. Sarah's recovery had been better than anyone expected, though she still tired quickly and had therapy almost every day. I walked up beside her and put my arm carefully around her shoulders, still too thin but stronger than before. She leaned into me and said she had been thinking about how impossible all of it felt. A year earlier, she had been working 2 jobs, barely keeping a roof over Lily's head. Then the aneurysm took her down, and now she was standing there in the sun, watching our daughter laugh. With my ring on her finger and a wedding waiting for the day her body was strong enough. I asked if she regretted the years we lost. Sarah watched Lily jump into the water and took a long breath. She said she regretted believing my mother's lies. She regretted not looking harder for the truth. Then she turned to me and said she did not regret one day with Lily, not even the hardest ones, because Lily had made every struggle mean something. I understood that better than she knew. Since Sarah woke up, we had been learning each other again slowly, not pretending the missing years hadn't hurt, not rushing forgiveness just because we still loved each other. Evelyn stayed in France, far from the damage she had caused. I didn't cut her out completely, but I kept a distance I needed to breathe. Sometimes she called Lily on video, and Lily spoke to her politely, cautiously, like a child who already understood that some adults must earn their place back slowly. Then Sarah told me Lily had asked her something that morning. She wanted to know if hungry people cry differently from sad people. I smiled because that question took me right back to the alley where everything began. I asked what Sarah told her. Sarah said she told Lily that hunger and sadness can look almost the same from the outside, but special people, people like her, can see past what someone looks like and notice what they truly need. From the pool, Lily waved at us with water running down her face. "Mom, Dad, watch this," she shouted before flipping herself upside down in the water, kicking her little legs proudly into the air. Sarah and I clapped like she had won an Olympic medal. Our hands found each other without thinking, fingers lacing together as if 12 years had not ended our story, only paused it. Then Sarah's expression softened. She said Lily had asked one more thing, whether Sarah remembered hearing her voice while she was asleep. I looked at her, suddenly afraid of the answer. Sarah nodded slowly and said she didn't remember everything, but Lily's voice had been like a thread in the dark, something she could follow when she didn't know where she was. Then she looked at me and added, "And yours too." After a while, Sarah looked at me and smiled softly. "You were reading Pride and Prejudice to me when I was asleep, weren't you?" I laughed quietly. "Yeah, Lily told me it was your favorite." Sarah lowered her eyes for a second, and I could see the emotion hit her all over again. "That little girl never gave up on me," she whispered, "even when everybody else thought I was gone." Down by the pool, Lily wrapped herself in an oversized towel with the Rachel Harper Foundation logo stitched across the front. Every time I saw that logo, I still thought about the first time I met her. Cold hands, torn shoes, half a stale piece of bread. It's strange what ends up changing your life. Sometimes it isn't a billion-dollar meeting or some huge moment people clap for. Sometimes it's just a hungry little kid stopping because she notices a grown man crying in an alley. Sarah leaned against my shoulder. "You know what scares me the most?" she asked softly. "How close we came to never finding each other again." I swallowed hard because I'd thought about that too. If my car hadn't broken down that morning, if Lily had walked past me like everybody else did, if fear had won over kindness for even 1 second, we would have missed an entire life together. And honestly, that realization still shakes me sometimes. "She saved us," I said quietly. "All 3 of us." Right then, Lily looked up toward the balcony with that huge, fearless smile of hers, like she somehow knew we were talking about her. "Mom, Dad, stop acting old and come swim already." Sarah burst out laughing beside me, and I swear that sound still heals something inside my chest every time I hear it. For years I thought my life was about winning, building, proving something to the world. Turns out the thing I needed most was sitting in a cold alley holding a piece of bread she could have eaten herself. That's the part I'll never forget. Not the money, not the company, not the headlines. Just a little girl asking me, "Mister, are you crying because you're hungry too?" And maybe that's the part I want people to remember after this story ends. You never really know what someone is carrying inside them. Sometimes, the people with the least are still the first ones willing to give love away. If this story meant something to you, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what moment hit you the hardest. And if you believe kindness still matters in this world, subscribe and stay with us for more stories like this. This story was inspired by real emotions and situations from life. Some details were adapted for storytelling purposes, and the visuals in this video were created with AI support.